Well, as we know, the Chancellor announced huge changes to pensions in his budget in March 2014. So that was new freedoms for people to use how they take their money after the age of 55, rather than just having to go with an annuity like many people used to. So a whole new range of flexibilities, new options, new tax rules, a new guidance service which they've called Pensions Wise, that's provided by the government to help people. And of course this all means new requirements on pension schemes, new rules that will be coming in from April the 6th when the new flexibilities come in about what schemes have to do to make these requirements work in practice. So the changes are being brought in by legislation, by government legislation. The Pension Schemes Bill is being considered by Parliament at present, but will hopefully become an act by March. But that's only really a few weeks before the changes come into place. And the regulations, the detailed regulations that come out underneath that act, then won't be published until March. And these are what sets out the detailed requirements for schemes. At the same time, the guidance service, the Pensions Wise, is being developed by the government as well. So hopefully in February there'll be a proper website for the Pensions Wise, and by March there'll be a phone line, a phone number for people to call to get advice sessions. And then on April the 6th, all the new changes go live. So the teach-ins were really aimed at helping people running trust-based DC pension schemes understand what changes they've got to make to their scheme communications by April the 6th. So really practically focused on the changes they've got to make over the next few months to implement these reforms and make sure that they are meeting the new regulations that are coming in. So the regulations set out in detail when it is that you have to change your communications and add in the extra information that's required. It sets out 3 triggers. The first trigger is the point where you normally send out the wake-up pack, which is at least 4 months before the person reaches their stated retirement age. And so it's just additional information you've got to put into that wake-up pack. The second trigger point is if the scheme member were to contact you and ask about their pension. They're over 55, they want to find out more about the benefits and what they can, how they can take the money. Then there's certain rules then about what you should say to them, what you should remind them about. Trigger 3 is if you choose to do any extra communications above and beyond the wake-up pack, which is mandatory. So if you were to go and contact them about the options that are available within the scheme, or anything else to do with taking your retirement, taking your pension lump sum or your pension after 55. So there's quite a long list of items that should be within the communications, and it's slightly different for each trigger as well, just to make it a bit more complicated. But broadly, and do make sure you go through and look at the detail when it comes out, but broadly you've got to talk about the value of the benefit that's being communicated about, whether there are any guarantees associated with that benefit, whether there are any options within the scheme that are available. You've got to remind people, of course, that they don't have to use the options within the scheme, that they can go and shop around, they can transfer, and they have a right to transfer. Then, of course, you've got to signpost people to the guidance service, Pensions Wise. So you've got to tell them that it's free and impartial, what it does, what the web address is, what the phone number, so that they can access it. And also you've got to encourage people to use it really. And finally mention, of course, that people may want to consider whether they get fully professional financial advice, because the guidance service is only guidance, it's not full financial advice. So there's a whole list of different items that are supposed to be included in these communications, and those are set out in regulation, so you do need to make sure they're all there. The session covered the requirements that people need the minimum requirements set out in the regulations that people have really got to focus on making sure are in place by April the 6th. But those are just minimum regulatory requirements. People should remember that they can do extra. They can start signposting people to the guidance service website as soon as it's available, start giving people the phone number as soon as it's available. Do go beyond the minimum and do things as soon as you can to be helpful to members to make sure that they can access the guidance. But they need to obviously focus on making sure they meet the regulations. Those will be published in final version hopefully in March with some guidance. So that will be helpful to make sure that people go through that and to make sure that you implement it from April the 6th. Then, of course, people should also be aware that this won't be the last changes to disclosure rules, to the rules on scheme member communications. There's now going to be a big review led by the FCA over the summer to look at communications at retirement in the round, and that will probably lead to even bigger changes in 2016 to all the rules around scheme member communications at retirement. So lots to think about.